Yes. Okay. All right, bye. We'll be starting in 1 minute. All righty. Give us 1 second. We're just getting our cameras ready, and we will be turning off the music in 1 minute. Cynthia, now I'm inviting you up. Oh gosh, I'm in the middle again. Why did that happen? Hello, everyone. Welcome to YNS Live with NFL Thread and our guest, Rebekah Sharpe. We are so excited to have you guys here live on Fireside. I'm going to have Cynthia introduce Rebekah, and then I'm going to take you guys through a little bit of housekeeping, how you can be sharing the show. And if you're joining us from LinkedIn, if you're joining us from Twitch or YouTube, welcome. There might be a chance that some of you are on Facebook. We have to see if that is working. Facebook has given us some hard times right now. But welcome everyone to YNS Live with NFL Thread. And I am your co-host, Juliette Hahn with Cynthia Zordich. Welcome, you guys.
Thank you. I'm so personally excited to have Rebekah on the show today. Rebekah is the daughter of my friends and my husband's former teammate, Louis Sharpe, All-Pro, fantastic person, and Kathy Sharpe. I had so much fun with Kathy in Arizona. And Rebekah is amazing, and her journey is incredible. And more, I just love the idea of diving into these lives of these NFL children. And Rebekah shares that passion, and I believe she's going to do something about that. But, Rebekah is an author. She's a host. She co-hosts a show with her dad. She is an ambassador and also a businesswoman. So, Rebekah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Cynthia, Juliette, I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for the invitation and for the great introduction. I know today is going to be an awesome show.
It is. Mm-hmm. It is. So a little housekeeping really quickly, and I can't wait to dive into this because there's so much that you are doing, which is exciting. So everyone that's in the show right now, the two little lines at the bottom to your left, if you guys can click on those and you'll see where it says share with followers and broadcast to the world. If you can broadcast to the world where you're sending this out so people can actually come and listen to the show without being in the show, this is why I love Fireside so much. As I said, I'm broadcasting right now from LinkedIn, YouTube. We're live on those channels. Hello, I see people jumping in there. We are on Twitch, and you can also be outside of the app. So you can be sending it to Facebook. If you're in the show right now, you can be sending it to Facebook. You can be emailing, you can be texting, you can be sending it to Twitter, all the different places you can be broadcasting to the world, which is really, really fun. So if you guys can do that as we're starting the show, that would be great. And then we're going to really get into Rebekah's story, which I am so excited about because it is
she takes
such an exciting one.
Water. Yeah.
Yes.
Let me make sure, wet my whistle there, right? Because we've got a lot.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So how we always start a little bit is just give us a little background about who you were, who you are, where you were born, if you went to university, and then we're going to get into the meat of the story.
Right.
Okay.
I definitely want to start with dive into your childhood though, babe. Don't rush through that because we are going to get to university, but I really would like for you to really talk about growing up in the game and that your early years in Arizona.
Okay, wonderful. Well, again, thank you for the opportunity. I'm excited to be on to share, and I see some of our viewers on, including my dad. So, Dad, thanks for hopping on and being here with us live and in living color. Yes.
Beautiful.
Okay. So, I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, to a very privileged and loving family. My father, as Cynthia mentioned, he and my mother met at UCLA. And then he went on to become a first-round draft pick in the 1988 draft. He enjoyed a very decorated career that included 3 Pro Bowl appearances. He had a strong presence in the Phoenix area, speaking engagements, leadership positions in the NFLPA. And he just truly had a command of both his craft and the community. I always like to tell people that, we had it all externally, a beautiful home, successful careers, exquisite family vacations. We were involved in every single after school activity that you could imagine. So just very abundantly blessed. And I'm grateful for the great memories that we do have within our childhood. However, after my dad suffered a career-ending knee injury, things really began to shift. And that was sort of the beginning of the American dream that my dad had been so blessed and fortunate to create. It started to unravel, and he struggled with substance abuse, and that caused a lot of dysfunction within our familial fold. And it was also a very public downward spiral. Some of the things that are etched in my memory banks. A local scribe for the Arizona Republic one time ran a story with the headline, "Football Hero Turns to Crackhead Zero." So those were the types of narratives that were, really prevailing at the time. And so you can imagine that it made for a lot of difficulties and challenges while we were at school, and kids being kids, repeating the things that they heard their parents say, and suddenly they were not able to come over to our home and we couldn't go to their home, and there were jokes that were being made and questions, very inappropriate questions that were being asked about some of the things that were happening within our household, and we began to be ostracized. And suddenly, we had all of these friends and everybody that loved to enjoy in the successes that we once held. But then as things really began to fall apart, our circle got smaller and smaller and smaller. And that was really hard to deal with as a child, especially experiencing both ends of the spectrum in such a short amount of time, at least that I can remember. So I actually ended up transitioning to Michigan when I was 15 years old. My grandparents and aunt, who are actually my dad's parents and his sister, had always been very close with them. They spent a lot of time in Phoenix. In fact, they would come very often to check on him and to try to, save him, as well as to just be supportive to us. And so we had very strong relationships, and we went to Michigan for a summer. And I was like, I don't think I can go back. It had gotten so bad and things were just so public. And I just started high school. and I needed a fresh start. I needed to kind of have some anonymity, right, and just begin to like rebuild my life because I was feeling so broken from the inside out. So I decided to stay in Michigan with them, which is its own journey in itself, but it definitely proved to be a safe haven and a refuge. And I'm just so incredibly blessed and grateful for the fact that they stepped up for me and my siblings in a time when we needed it the most. But unfortunately, a couple years after moving to Michigan and actually starting to attend the University of Michigan, the summer of my freshman year is when life really, everything changed. And that's when we lost my older sister and guardian angel, Leah. She was murdered and she was only 23 years old. And I just remember at that time feeling like I was never going to laugh again. I wasn't going to be able to continue on with life. I was ready to leave school. Again, that public spectacle piece really started to take shape again because my dad was using drugs at the time, and it was just a lot of media presence and reporters, and some of the stories that were published at the time were just very hurtful and completely lacked any sort of human decency and just sort of exploited the very worst parts of our lives. We're humans, right? But
Right.
I didn't feel like we were always treated as such. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about, my background and some of the major things that occurred to me as I was growing up. And what sort of set the foundation as to the woman that you see before you today.
And I think, it was so important is that stories connect us. We talk about this all the time, and not everyone knows how to share their story, and you do it so beautifully and so raw. And so I want to say thank you so much for sharing that, because you can see yourself as a child, with your father at this level where, he is great. And then he gets an injury. And how many times have we heard this story of someone getting injured and then getting addicted to drugs, but people don't follow through on, the good stuff afterwards. And that's why I think it's so important that you guys share your story, because you can be down and down and down, but if you have the family love and the support and the tenacity to get back up and keep getting back up and not letting life, throw you down, you get back up and you're like, you know what, I want to share my story because I know it's going to help someone. And that's what you and your dad are doing, especially with your podcast and your books and all of that. But I think it's really important. And I would like to ask, when you painted the picture of yourself as a child and watching your dad go through this and then having it in the headlines, what I know you said it in high school, when you went to Michigan, but how old were you? Was it like middle school age that this was happening and unfolding? Am I correct with that?
Yeah. So, and thank you for the compliments. I really do appreciate it because it is not easy. And I know we'll get a chance to talk about that a little bit later, but I've had to do a lot of work on myself, right, in order to be able to harness the things that have happened to me and use them to serve the greater good of humanity. But I do appreciate and am grateful that I can be the embodiment of what is possible, right? And I can help show people and kind of illuminate the way of turning your pain into your power. But yes, so it was unfolding pretty much most of my elementary and middle school, high school years. I mean, he struggled with addiction for 20 years. So the bulk of my childhood, there was something going on, whether he was out in the streets using drugs, being shot, in jail, prison. I mean, I spent part of my childhood, which is just fascinating when you think about it. Like, there was a part of my childhood where I was on these football fields and I'm cheering with the Arizona Cardinals and I'm going through the tunnel with my dad and I'm seeing people like chant his name and all of these amazing experiences that only a small percentage of people get the opportunity to actually live out. But then years later, I'm visiting my dad in prison, and he's dressed in this prison garb and he's sending me, I mean, they were beautiful gifts, but gifts that, artists in the prisons would create. And we're writing letters to one another and I'm, receiving his collect calls. So just the complete spectrum that I went through with my father in itself is something that I've really had to grapple through, and find peace within. But I know there's a reason that I was able to experience both sides of life, because I think it allows me to connect with people from both, the highest of the highs, but also the lowest of the lows, because I have been through both.
You've been through both. And not only have you been through both, but then you also had to navigate it yourself. You had to navigate it with your family. You had to, go through those ups and downs privately and out in the world. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the thing. You were in the public spotlight, and people don't, again, this is why I love having these shows, because people don't think about that. Like, if you really think about that, a child having to go through this, but also mourning the loss of their father, right? The father that was there, mourning the loss of going through the tunnel, and being able to, get out. So did you have help within the family? I mean, did you guys talk about it and that kind of stuff? Sorry, go ahead, Cynthia.
Yeah, I definitely want to dive into something that is really important to me along those lines. I always try to say to NFL families, and especially NFL parents, or even collegiate parents of athletes, that is your son and not a prospect. It isn't a player. And what I'm understanding and feeling is that Luis's family saw him as a son and a brother, and they never saw him as a player. And so therefore they were able to recognize that he had a problem. It is something that had nothing to do with anything other than a crisis, and they saw it for what it was, and they tried to heal and tried to help, and taking you guys in and creating this home for you of love. I want you to kind of dive into that and tell us, because we can all learn so much from a family like Luis's, that brought in and didn't judge and didn't push away, but brought you guys in.
Yeah, and I think what the real underpinning of that is, we are Cuban. So I mentioned, like, my dad experienced the American dream, but really he did. I mean, he came to this country when he was only 6 years old. They lived in the southwestern part of Detroit, and they faced a lot of adversity even growing up, because they were different. They didn't speak the language. They didn't have a lot of resources at the time, and people just didn't understand how to accept differences back in the late 60s and early 70s. And so they created their own, like, subset or subculture, if you will. So family and legacy and unity and belonging are just such critical components of my Cuban heritage, which is why I'm so grateful and proud to be Cuban, and thankful that I got an opportunity to relocate and live with my grandparents and really be immersed in just this ecosystem of love and of joy and of forgiveness and of, like, going to bat for one another, regardless of what you've done. I still love you. I'm going to support you. I'm going to show up for you. And I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that you have what it is that you need to succeed. I mean, I even think about my grandfather. He came here and worked in the plant for Ford Motor Company for, 30 years as a striper. And now here I am, second generation, working at the world headquarters of Ford Motor Company and really continuing his legacy. But they came here with the mindset of, we're going to work hard. We're going to help one another. Our kids and our grandchildren are going to know we love them. We care about them. And there is nothing in the world that they could do that would separate them from that love. And they had that mindset. And it was so evident because, my grandparents are in their 60s and supposed to be enjoying retirement. And instead they were helping to raise us. They were flying across country to see about their son. And no matter what my dad did, I just always remember the grace that they operated within, and how they would always just make space for him to come back and to know that he had a home, and that it didn't matter if he was making Pro Bowls or if he was, with prostitutes on the streets. Like, they loved him and they wanted the best for him and for us. And I know that has just been so essential. And again, me becoming the woman that I am today, I did not get here alone. I am the sum of many parts.
And that's beautiful. And that's what I was getting at, is that you had the support within your family and you had the love of, and Cynthia, it was wonderful how you said that he wasn't just a player, he was a person. And that is so much lost at a lot of times. People just see him. When Cynthia and I started this show, there was time and time again when people would talk about, their spouse or their dad got traded. And, people outside the league, it's like, oh, I'm so excited this player just went there. And I said, I will never think of it that way again. I'll think about the people behind the scenes. What is that like for the family and the spouse and the kids? And it's the same for what you went through. It's not, your dad is your dad, and he was also this hero. And then you having to navigate those waters, but being able to be brought into a family that's loving, that you see also, this is my son and I need to see he's hurting, right? We can't turn our back on him. He's hurting. Let's help and figure this out. So I think it's so beautiful. And, the Cuban culture, I'm familiar with it. My sister lives in Miami, and she is married to a Cuban man and actually has struggled with substance abuse. Yes. And so my mom took in her nephew. So this is like very, very close to my heart. And I completely understand from the side as a sibling going through this. And so the family support is so important, and there's such the fine line of the family support. So if you can take us through that as well, because there's times where I'm sure you were angry at your father, and and how did you handle that, the anger and the love at the same time, and navigating that as a child?
Yeah, so I think for a lot of my childhood, I was angry, I was mad, but as I have grown up, I recognize that a lot of times mad covers sad, and I was really just sad. I was really just disappointed. I was really just dealing with abandonment and with shame and with grief, because I did not have that nuclear family that it seemed like so many other families in our zip code had. Cynthia, you are familiar, right? Living in Awatuki, and it was a scene from, just everybody had a white picket fence, and it seemed like things were just perfect, right? And so as things really began to fall apart in our family, I really did feel like we were just, again, this public spectacle, and everybody was just sort of watching our demise, coupled with the fact that we were one of the only few African-American families in the neighborhood. So that had its own undertone as well. And so I do appreciate the community, though, because there were certain individuals who stepped up how they could, who understood and saw what was happening and tried to help. And I always try to give them honor, because I can't say that everybody just turned the other cheek. My parents sowed a lot of really good seeds within our community, and there was a harvest on that and people trying to help. But unfortunately, some things just were seemingly broken beyond repair. And as I have grown up, I realized everybody was going through their own things. They may have done a much better job at sort of concealing it, right? But as we've all matured, as we've all matured, and now as adults, we're reconnecting, and it's like, oh wow, you were going through that, and this was transpiring in your home, and you started utilizing these substances because of the trauma of your childhood. And again, I'm like, wow, I'm not alone. Mine was just placed on, for a display for all of the public to see and consume, but there was a lot that was happening behind closed doors. And so, I've learned to just find healing in community and sharing my story as well, because before I just had so much shame, associated with the things that happened to me. But now I recognize, no, this adversity is an asset, and it is a way that I can connect with other individuals and show them that healing is possible. And so is reconciliation, and we are walking in redemption. And so I will share a story that is always, just so beautiful to me. So my father, he became close to death on 4 different occasions. Twice he was shot in the streets of Phoenix. One time he was just a centimeter away from dying. He had to have his mouth wired shut while he was, confined and arrested in handcuffs to a hospital bed. And he's recovering from major surgery, life-saving surgery, right? Another time in 2010, he was actually involved in a race riot in the prison, and he was beat over the head with rocks inside of socks. And he was beat unconscious, had to have facial reconstruction surgery. I mean, it was like really, really grave, but the Lord, saved him. And then in 2018, we get a call, and he had a massive heart attack while he was working out. And the doctor said his LAD artery, which is called the widowmaker in medical communities, was 98% blocked. And at that moment, when I got to St. Anne's Mercy Hospital, I realized, I'm like, you are here for a reason. Like, the fact that you have escaped death that we know of 4 different times, like, there is obviously a greater purpose that is attached to your life. And I made a commitment in saying, I want to be a part of really unearthing that and discovering why God has saved your life and what he still wants to use you to do in the earth. And I always say that I really feel like God healed the anatomy of both of our hearts as we were in that ICU unit, because after that is really when the healing began, when the forgiveness started to take root, and where we started to discover the greater purpose that we were meant to do together.
Oh, so beautiful. I mean, that is just so beautiful. And I want you speak so eloquently. You're an ordained minister, and that comes across. I mean, when I'm sitting there, I feel like I'm in your house, in your church right now, you speaking. But it's so true. When you were saying that, I was like, your dad is here for a reason. God has saved him so many times, right? Put him on this platform where he's able to have the notoriety, where he can see that fame, and then brought him down to this low, you have to learn in this too. And then the healing that you guys did as a family it's remarkable. And so again, stories connect us, and so many people are connecting to you and your dad and your family's story because of what you guys are doing and getting it out there, that, you can be a drug addict, you can be in prison, but that doesn't mean that that is the end of your life. You have the time to rewrite your own chapters, and you guys are doing that right now. And so thank you. I mean, the chills, that's just so beautiful. So beautiful. Cynthia, I know you want to add something there. I can see it.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting to me is that, so now this is twice that I know of that you have taken tragedy and turned it into triumph. And to me, it's interesting to look at you and how you deal with crisis. And the first time is in losing Leah. And, you said you didn't want to go back to school, that you didn't know what your purpose was, but instead you found hope in Barack Obama, and you found a purpose in having that letter writing committee. Can you share that story? Because that's the first time. And then I would like for you to share the second part where you and your father went on to speak in church at Father's Day. So both of those are instances where you turned serious tragedy into triumph.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to share. So while I was in college, it was a time where then Senator Obama began his campaign for presidency. And I was just so inspired by he and his wife, like their image and their likeness. It touched the depths of my soul. And I think it was because I was experiencing so much pain and so much brokenness. And I was trying to discover like who I was and how I wanted to show up in the world. And they just gave me a blueprint, their eloquence, their brilliance, but also like their love for one another and this beautiful family that they represented. I saw so much of myself in them, right? And I just had new role models that I wanted to aspire toward. And so after he won the election in 2008, I was like, I've got to find a way to bring him to the University of Michigan. I saw that he spoke at ASU and a couple of other colleges. And I'm like, okay, there's got to be a way to make this happen. And, before I knew it, I was sitting with the president of the university and other leaders of various student-led organizations on campus. And we were putting together a strategy on how we were going to get all of these major student-led organizations to sign this petition to present to the university like management, I guess you could say, or the regents of the university. And we are going to present this case to them essentially and showcase all of the different like nonpartisan just support to bring this person to come and speak to our graduating class. And we worked with a couple of different alum that were actually serving in his cabinet and within his staff at the time. And I'll never forget the day that I got the call to go into the President Mary Sue Coleman's office, and they told me that he was going to be coming. I could have like fallen out of my chair. I was just overcome with emotion and happiness and joy. And I'm like, wow, because so many, it wasn't just me, so many of my collegiate friends were just so inspired and empowered and impacted by that entire time. That was the first time many of us voted as well. So it really did represent a change in our lives. And so I knew that it meant so much to me, but it meant even more to everyone around me. So I was excited for all of the ways we were going to be able to celebrate this triumph and this great feat. And yeah, I also got the opportunity to serve as the flag bearer for the College of Literature, Science, and the Arts. And so I met him and I got a chance to talk to him and tell him, how much I appreciated him and how I was so inspired to be a part of this campaign to bring him to college or to bring him to our campus for our commencement. So that was just incredible. Yeah, sometimes I forget about that like I actually did that while I was going
Yeah.
through so much. And just of note, like, my dad, he wasn't able to come to my commencement. He was unfortunately serving a prison sentence at the time. And Leah wasn't there, right? Because she had passed away. So even though that day was filled with a lot of happiness and joy, there were still parts and people that were missing and that, weren't able to partake in the success of that moment. So yeah, but still a great story nonetheless. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, really, I was going to say it had to have been such an outer body experience. And I feel like a lot of what you went through, you had to be sometimes taken back and seeing, oh my gosh, is this really happening to me? Is this really what I'm going through? And, I always ask this question, and I shouldn't say always, but a lot of times I always want to get down to the someone's grit, like what makes them just get up every single time. And I mean, we heard it in the beginning, right? I mean, your life is really okay, I'm just going to get up and dust it off. And it's because there's a purpose. And as you said, there's a purpose for you and your father and your family, because your story is so powerful to be able to be like, okay. And so big things are happening to you. I'm sure all the small things you don't even think about sometimes because you're having big things happen to your life. And just stepping out of that. So, as you said, I mean, did your friends and everyone around you know what you were going through, or did you internalize that a lot, or were you someone that lived that out loud at this time when this all was happening?
Definitely internalized all of it. There are some of my friends from college that say they remembered when they would ask me about my family, how I would just like tense up and get really quiet. I didn't have language to really share what I was going through at the time. Also, going to a university like Michigan, where you're among very elite students that come from phenomenal families and very influential families. And I felt like if I was vulnerable and transparent and talked about what was really going on, that I would be ostracized and that people would no longer like me, right? Because it's like I don't fit this picture perfect mold that many of us were trying to ascend to, right? And to show others that we were. So yeah, I didn't talk about it at all. One thing people did know, because Facebook was just starting up at the time, was that my sister passed away, just because that was something that was being shared on social media. But I remember going back to campus that next semester, and many people, like, they didn't know how to talk about it. So that we did not. There were, certain individuals who were in my close circle of influence, but for the most part, I didn't really have the space or the grace to share it with others. And so, yeah, a lot of internalizing, which led to just more trauma, like compounded trauma. Like what I have learned about trauma as I've been doing research and on this healing journey and this journey of release, like it's not just what happens to you, but it's what happens inside of you as a result of the things that happen to you. Like your body keeps score. And there were a lot of things that I had to work out physically because of all of the internalized trauma that compounded over the years.
So would you say then, Rebekah, that if you could go back and become a freshman or a sophomore, because that's after everything happened to you at Michigan, is your platform to not internalize it? Would you have been more transparent if you could go back? And is that what you advise other kids to do?
Absolutely. I absolutely would, because they're really, I mean, like we've said before, this is how we help other people overcome, the word of our testimony. And when you begin to share your story, you will be surprised at the number of individuals who not only will empathize with you, but will raise their hand and say, wow, me too. It may not be your sister and it may not be your father, but it's someone within your family or your friendship circle. There's somebody in your life that that is struggling. And I think in particular, back then it was not as widely talked about, and the discourse around it was still a little hush hush. But now, I mean, with the numbers, the way that they are, around like 1 in 5 Americans are going to be diagnosed with a mental illness in any given year, and suicide being the second leading cause of death, or the 10th leading cause of death in the U.S., the second cause for individuals between the age of 10 and 34. And then, substance abuse and overdoses. I mean, we are in the midst of a crisis. In 2021, it was over 140,000 people passed away from overdose. And that's the highest that's ever been recorded. It's up 30% year over year. I mean, it is the numbers are just reeling, right? But they showcase that there's obviously something deeper that's going on. I feel like the more we talk about it, that's how we reduce the stigma. That's how we normalize conversations. And that's how we find places and spaces of healing. So we don't have to internalize everything and try to figure it out on our own. We can extend ourselves to other people and be carried by those who are around us, while also helping them get through what it is that they may be going through. So there's so much beauty in sharing. And I think that is one of the things that really fuels me to continue onward, because it's not easy talking about these things that have happened to me, and to be so vulnerable and transparent and just sort of lay it all out there, right? And people are like, oh, you're doing so well. And I'm like, well, it still impacts me. I am human, right? And I do still deal with certain ramifications, right, of some of the things that I've experienced, but I know that it is impacting others. I recognize the way in which it is, again, showcasing what is possible, and that why, that purpose, that triumph from tragedy is what continues to propel me forward, because I want to be what I wish I had while I was going through it.
Oh, that's beautiful. So, I mean, that's, you talked about when you were a kid and then people ostracizing you because of your story, because it was in the headlines. It wasn't that you were talking about it. It was being talked about. And then you're in college and I call it stuffing. My kids love this term. I'm like, are you stuffing? You're stuffing your emotions because you're like, I don't want to go through that again. Right. So then you're there, but you're going through all of this stuff. And then as you're getting into your adulthood, you're reconnecting with your father. You're really, patching that up and really seeing, okay, there's a purpose for my father and I. There's a purpose for my father. Is that what led you to start writing your books? If you can take us through that a little bit.
Absolutely. Yes. I've got the first book that I co-authored right here, Millennial Transformations, How the Power of Prayer Manifests Miracles. And really what this is it's more of an anthology and a collection of stories of 20 different millennial women talking about topics ranging from addiction and mental health, but also graduate school and divorce and, just different things that have happened to them in their lives, and how they relied on the power of prayer and the beauty of community to ultimately get to a place of healing, whatever that looks like for them, but also in sharing their stories and recognizing like, hey, I want other people to know what I've gone through, because it will become a blueprint for someone else as they find themselves in the same predicament and situation. We actually penned this masterpiece in the middle of 2020. So while we were going through the pandemic, we wanted to find purpose in the pandemic, right? We'd always talk about wanting to write a book, and we're like, let's do it. Now is the time. We've got all this excess time and opportunity. Let's really seize the moment. So we wrote the book, put the book together, and then that's when my dad and I, that sort of led us into starting Sharpe Talk, our podcast, because we were like, oh, well, let's talk about the book. And then anytime my dad and I would get in front of a camera, it was really moving people, and they liked to see us together and to hear different things that were on our hearts. And we're like, you know what, we might be onto something here, because I mean, literally, like, the comments from people and the calls and the text messages, like, it was undeniable that it was obviously sparking something really unique and special in those who got a chance to tune in. And so we just begin to really build from there. But the foundation was sharing our testimony, creating a platform to allow others to share their stories, because that's how we connect, and that's how other people find hope, especially in the midst of such harrowing times.
Yes.
Exactly. If you don't mind, because I want to know what it felt like that day, but if you wouldn't mind sharing the story of Father's Day, and that you were invited to speak at the church and with Daddy. And I just would like for you to share that with everybody.
Yeah. So, Cynthia, as I mentioned, while we were in the hospital and the Lord was healing the anatomy of both of our hearts, there was a man named Paul who my dad was working with around like some speaking engagements. And so, Paul actually called while we were in the hospital. My dad handed me the phone and I let him know what was going on and just sort of some of the things that were fresh on our hearts as we had been having some initial conversations. And he's like, great, I would love to get you all to speak together. We were both like, okay, like that sounds good. Within a week, Paul calls us back and he's like, hey, I've got an opportunity for a Father's Day weekend in Cape May, New Jersey, and you all will be able to share the stage together. We were both like, okay, like let's do it. So we get to Cape May, and I had to really be honest with myself and with all of the listeners because I'm like, hey guys, I know what it's like to not know where your father is on Father's Day. There were many of Father's Days that I didn't even talk to my dad. I didn't know if he was alive or not. And that really had a detrimental impact on the way I viewed the Father's love, as in God, right? Our Heavenly Father, because I had such a volatile and just complicated relationship with my earthly father. And so being vulnerable again, being transparent, I was kind of going there expecting to just be in my dad's shadow. Like, okay, they want to hear from him. They had a big blown up poster of him. And it was all about Louis Sharpe, all pro player coming to speak on Father's Day. But really, when I spoke and when I just shared from the chambers of my heart, my dad always says, like, you got the standing ovation, right? Because people really connected to what I had to say. And then afterwards, we go into the vestibule. We did 3 services that weekend, literally a line all the way around the church. I'm thinking people are coming to talk to him and, get their card signed. They wanted to talk to, both of us, but they really wanted to talk to me because they were like, again, that me too. Like, I have a daughter, I have a sister, I have a friend, like just that connection piece of I've experienced mental illness and addiction and loss and imprisonment, and you standing up there sharing so boldly, but also giving us hope was just such a powerful exchange. I was not anticipating or expecting that, but that was definitely one of those moments where I realized like we've got something special here, and we would do such a disservice to this generation if we did not lean into it and find more opportunities and channels to share our story so that we can invoke healing and inspire hope for others.
Oh my gosh. And I have to say, Cynthia, this, which is making me like laugh inside, not laugh, but like just beam inside is, after the show, Rebekah, Cynthia will go through and we'll pick out like, beautiful quotes and beautiful videos. And that's what we share on social media as the episode goes out on all the podcast players. And I'm thinking, I don't know if we're going to be able to pick one. We might have to have 100. Yeah. I mean, you are so, Thank you. I mean, you really are. And I have to know, what did you study? And you might have said this, so I'm sorry, but in University of Michigan, what was your major? Was it writing?
It was communication.
It was communication. Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah. I mean, right. You have a talent. I mean, you really do.
Thank you. Yeah. And it really, thank you. I appreciate that. But it really is natural. Like I've not done any formalized training or anything. And we can kind of talk a little bit about how things really took shape with Hall of Fame Health. But this was my dad's retirement plan. Like he was a sports anchor. I don't know if you remember this, Cynthia. He did it in the off season and everybody was always just stopped. I mean, he's also bilingual, right? And so it's like, wow, he has all these great and powerful communication techniques and tools. And that was his plan when he retired, was to go into media. And I remember going to the station when we were younger and being inspired as a young girl, like, wow, this is so amazing, like in front of the camera and to see all the behind the scenes. And so this was a dream of my heart to do. But again, I was so traumatized and triggered by the time I was in college. I was just like, I've got to just finish. I need to complete this degree and move on with my life so that I can, be a contributing member of society. So it's been such a blessing for me to be able to really step into more of the fullness of who I am and to like own this gift that I've been given and to also recognize like it came from my father. And so when we talk about legacy and being able to further legacy, like it's not just on the field, right? But there's a way that I can impact beyond the field and continue to walk in the shadow, not even the shadow, but to just build on the foundation that he created, and do and complete the things that he was not able to because of the decisions that he made in his life. So it really is so full circle. And I feel honored and blessed that I'm actually here to experience it.
Right.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. I feel like you're pulling Daddy like out of his own shadow too. You're bringing him to the spotlight, which is really interesting because, just by him participating in some of your, Facebook live shows, and that seeing that the people were embracing your relationship and, embracing your conversations, and that they were so real. Like, this is so interesting to me that you guys have your show and you have these conversations, and yes, you're sharing your story, but now you're also sharing other stories, and you're encouraging people to open up and giving them that platform to do so. So it's just beginning. It really is. It's just beginning. And you keep feeding off of each other, because with Daddy being approached to be an ambassador for Hall of Fame Health, or to be, involved with what's going on with the former NFL players, it's like, well, have you met my daughter? And have you talked to her and what she's doing? So talk about your introduction to Hall of Fame Health, and what you're doing now, and what your goal is to do in the future with them. So it's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. And so he shared his testimony here locally in Detroit. And the woman who is in charge of this chapter of the Former Players Association, she was part of the initial group that was putting together the Hall of Fame Health Initiative. And so she reached out to my dad like, hey, we'd love to have you as an ambassador. We know your story. We think that you could really do some great things with this work. And he's like, oh, wonderful. He's like, but have you talked? Or he was like, I would like for you to talk to my daughter, because she too shares this passion. Excuse me. And I think that she'd really be able to add a lot to the initiative. And at the time, the lady was like, oh, that's great, but we're really not looking to include families just yet. We want to focus mainly on the players. And my dad's like, okay, I understand that, but I think that you should just talk to my daughter. And so we had a couple of email exchanges. We finally had a conversation. And after I just sort of poured my heart out, she was like, okay, we've got to figure out a way to get you involved with this initiative, and to also begin to expand the offering, because it does impact the family. Like, the players are not in a silo. They are part of a greater family fold. And when they make decisions for their lives, it touches and reaches everybody that is within their circle of influence. And so I always say, like, I was the first player and family advocate, but it's beautiful to see how it's been extended and expanded, because the families really, we need each other. And Cynthia, I honor you for the work that you have done, even with Thread and with Pivot, because you are really connecting the families, and you're showing us that we have community and we have a network, and that other people understand what it is that we have gone through. And so with Hall of Fame Health, they came to Detroit, and I was part of the planning committee for their fundraising event here. And I just sort of threw, my hat over the wall. And I'm like, hey, I'm really trying to move into this public speaking realm. I would love to serve. I obviously have an abundant passion around these topics, because our mission is to reduce stigma, raise awareness, and transform culture around mental health, behavioral health, and substance abuse. And they're like, okay, well, you can facilitate the player panel. I'm like, perfect, that's great. Then the week of, they're like, hey, can you also do the red carpet interviews? And I'm like, great, sure. I've never done the red carpet before, but absolutely, I'll rise to the occasion. Right. And things went so well with the player panel. I mean, it was literally just I kind of even surprised myself, to be honest with you. I'm like, I knew that I was excited, and I was ready to sort of unleash greatness, right? But it was like, wow, that was really powerful. That was impactful, and everybody felt it. Like, and I say this so humbly, everybody came up to me afterwards like, girl, wow, and what are you doing? Like, this is amazing. Even the players who talk to people all the time, right? So that was like definitely a triumphant moment, and I was so grateful to share it with many members of my family. And from that one event, Hall of Fame Health was like, we want you to come to every city. So I've been to Dallas with them and Denver, and we're working on an event for next year in Nashville. Cynthia, I know you talked about your event that you're going to partner with us on for Pittsburgh. So hoping to get there as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's been a beautiful partnership.
That's your stomping grounds too, to go back to Pittsburgh. So this is going to be so great, because Hall of Fame Health, and I'll be co-hosting with Tasha and, with Latasha Batch, and we're going to be doing it with Off the Field because they're partnered with Off the Field. And so I think that they really did embrace that, and you might have started that because they were like, this will be an excellent partnership, and it has been a great partnership. So I'll see you in, we'll do the panel, and I'll definitely see you in Pittsburgh in the spring because that's going to happen. So excited. Yeah.
And it's so amazing too.
Well, I was going to say, you could just see how excited you get. You can see, and you could see the passion and the excitement. And every time, you speak and you can see the love that you have and that you want to share. But I think, every time I want to say something, this word just keeps coming to my mind, and it's forgiveness. And that you can get to a place, it doesn't matter what has happened in the past. If you open your heart and open your mind and know that there's something bigger out there, it's not about you, it's something bigger. That the fact that you and your dad came together so beautifully, and I know it has to mean so much to him as well, that, he knows that he made mistakes. We all make mistakes, right? We all make mistakes. No one is perfect. But that he was able to, you guys were able to heal, and that you forgave, and now you're on this bigger platform where you're going to show other people, if I went through all this and I'm here, so can you. If my dad went through what he went through and he is here, he can show you. And this is what we need more in the world. We need these stories to connect us, these stories for people to relate and say, you know what, let me look in the mirror at myself and see where I can heal someone else. So thank you so much for doing all that you're doing, and the fact that you're now doing it and giving back to even the NFL community with Hall of Fame Health, I think is just so beautiful.
Right. Yeah, I think it's so beautiful too, because what you're also doing is really, who cares about public's perception of us, but what you're really doing is offering to anybody that has had something happen in their life, become proud that they went through that. Proud of that part of their legacy, so, you look at mommy and you look at daddy and you look at Leah and you look at your family, you look at daddy's family, and all of a sudden you're proud of everything that you went through together because of the forgiveness and because of the growth and because of the triumph and because of what you're doing now. And I always feel that way. It doesn't matter what you did. It just matters what you do from that point on. And everybody loves that. And I think that the most important is that we love who we are, even with all the things that happen to us, that we can't always control. So I'm really proud of you and your entire family. And it's just because I know your family from first day of heading to Arizona, because, daddy was a St. Louis Cardinal. He was a Phoenix Cardinal and an Arizona Cardinal. I wonder how many players were that many, because the 3 times. And, my father-in-law is here visiting right now, and we were talking about daddy. He remembered everything, because if you needed an interview, it was Louis Sharpe. He was the face of our team because he was so eloquent in speaking. He was so smart. He was so charismatic. He was such a team person and a loving person. And same thing with Kathy. She was one of the first people to ever walk up to me young and pregnant and embrace me. And we had so many laughs together and so much fun. And I just loved being a part of your family, and I love seeing where your family is now. And a lot of that, honey, is because of you and because of your heart. So God bless you.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate those sentiments, and I receive them. And I feel so honored and so grateful to have taken what the enemy meant for evil, to not only see it be used for my good, but also the saving and helping and inspiring of many other lives. And that truly is my mission. That is my purpose. And that is what I am so grateful for the opportunity to do now, and hopeful that I'll be able to do this work for the rest of my life.
I was just saying, you are just getting started, my friend. And I know that I know that we are coming to the end of the show, but you are just getting started. I mean, wow. And Cynthia said you're going to be wowed. Really. I mean, you are just getting started. You and your dad are just getting started, and the stories and the connections that you're going to be making and the people that you're going to be helping just makes me so happy. So I'm so happy that and so honored that you joined Cynthia and I here on YNS Live with NFL Thread, here live on Fireside. And everyone, go follow, I mean, Sharpe Talk, go follow Rebekah. You could see here her Instagram, and you can also go and follow what these guys are doing. And, thank you, Louie, for being in the audience and everyone. And yeah, Cynthia, do you want to
I have to say
wrap this up? Yeah.
Well, this is kind of fun, but such a great product. Bohemian popcorn. I came across them last year at the Super Bowl. Remember, Juliet, we had them in the bags, and Tony did that video where he was inhaling them. So they approached me this weekend. So they'll be sending Rebekah and Luis this bags of awesome Bohemian flavored popcorn. There's like burnt butter and oh my God, it's so good. I literally had like so many bags of them. So that's part of your like little special thank you treat for being on. And I just wanted to share that with you and share that for them too, because they were awesome with us last year at the Super Bowl, and hope again this year too, and sharing their product, Bohemian. It's kind of fun.
Yes, wonderful. Well, yes, thank you again, Rebekah.
And popcorn. Yeah, we look forward to the popcorn. Before I go though, so I mentioned my book, Millennial Transformations. I also have scripture affirmation cards. Affirmations have been so powerful for me, just renewing my mind and reminding myself of who I am. And then I've got another additive here about my other book, Truth from the Throne. So anybody who follows me and who mentions this interview, I want to send these to you just as goodies, as spiritual edifying tools that will help you on your journey as well. So that's what this work is all about, equipping, edifying, and uplifting others. So please reach out to me. I'd love to be able to send that package to you. And I look forward to remaining connected. Cynthia, we talked about some great things that we'd love to do in the future. And I am here to help individuals turn their wounds into wisdom and their visions into victory. So please reach out to me. I'd love to talk about ways that I can assist you and help you on your journey, and just for you to be a part of the great things that are happening in my life. Because like Juliet said, and I received that. Just getting started. Lots more.
You are.
Just getting started.
Yes. Right? And also if people want to reach out to you, if they want you to speak, if they are having an event or anything like that, you're public speaking, you're an ordained minister. If they're getting married and they're like, let's this powerful woman. I mean, there's so many different things that you do.
Absolutely.
Please reach out to Rebekah. And
we'll have everything in the show too, notes. Yeah. Just so you know too, we'll be sharing
on my website.
Right.
Oh yeah, we'll have it all in the show notes. Yep. And this will go out in a couple weeks, and we'll let you know when it goes out. Yep. But this was here live on Fireside. People can get it there too. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Yes. Yeah, starting today, we'll be sharing, and everything that we share will lead everybody, because I would love to get that for my son too. Just the meditations, just pulling parts that are important. I definitely want to share that. And the millenniums, I would love to get that for my, all the girls in my life, Aiden and Lindsay and Nicolette. I just think that would be awesome for them. So we'll be sharing, and I'll be receiving them. That's awesome.
Well, thank you, everyone. Again, thank you. People on
and for the opportunity.
Yes, no, wonderful. And I know we'll be seeing each other. So this is not it. This is just getting started.
Absolutely.
So guys,
exactly.
If you're on LinkedIn, if you're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, wherever you are watching this live, goodbye. And please go follow Rebekah on Instagram. You can see right here. And I'm going to say her name is not spelled like Rebekah, like some of us know. It is a different spelling. So I'm going to spell it right now, because I am dyslexic and I would never spell it this way. And I love the way I love it's so beautifully. Oh my God, it's gorgeous. It's Rebekah. And then H, and then A as in your middle name, right? And then Sharpe, Sharpe. That is the Instagram. So if you guys are also, if you're driving, please don't do that. Just go and come back here and you'll be able to see it. You can get this on Fireside. This will be going out on the Fireside streams right now. And Rebekah, I know that you have to go and get to your other call. So please, we are. You 2 minutes. So we're going to, and we got some good music taking us out, but thank you guys again for joining us live. Yes. Good luck with everything live here on Fireside. Bye everyone.